Yeah. Look, Scott Morrison had a choice between standing up for ripped-off workers or sucking up to a tosser who ripped them off, and he chose the tosser. He chose Clive Palmer. The fact is that today, when I heard that Scott Morrison was holding a press conference with the Deputy Prime Minister, I thought, that's interesting. Scott Morrison and Clive Palmer are having a joint press conference. I wonder why they're doing it in parks. Because the fact is that this bloke should be anathema to people who are mainstream Australians. I did have to negotiate through the 43rd Parliament, but it was pretty hard some of the time because Clive was asleep, sitting on the front bench during question time. Here in Tasmania, can I say this? This morning we have comments from the National Party senator, and you'll remember him. He's the guy who was actually appointed as an independent to replace the Jackie Lambie party senator, Jackie Lambie, when she had to resign, which she was a member of that party before she was an independent, before she was a member of Palmer United Party, which was how she was elected. That person has never been elected by anybody, has been through about 5 different parties. I mean, this is the recipe for absolute chaos in this country that Scott Morrison is putting forward. But today this bloke has said there's no difference between the Nationals and One Nation, which is why they'll give preferences to One Nation. Just like Scott Morrison's party, the LNP, are doing preference deals with One Nation throughout Queensland. Now, here in Tasmania, that's particularly offensive because we have Pauline Hanson, who joined in on the conspiracy theory about Port Arthur. And you have a Tasmanian senator saying there's no difference between One Nation and the Nationals. Well, what's very clear about these preference negotiations that have taken place, whether it's Palmer or whether it's Hanson, is that it is a recipe for absolute chaos. And if we have a Morrison, Hanson, Palmer government, then it will be the most chaotic in Australia's history. And Australians need to think very carefully, not just about not voting for these fringe hard-right parties, but about not voting for someone who's prepared to promote them and bring them in as if they are mainstream. They are not. They are dangerous, they are wreckers, and they would be at the heart of a Morrison government if he's successful in 3 weeks' time.
Could you just clarify your comments yesterday on Sky? Did you say that there'd been no conversations with Labor
Sky
yesterday?
No.
No.
That was the Today Show.
Oh,
I have to be loyal to the Today Show. They give me a slot every Friday at 7:15.
Just to clarify, were you saying that there hadn't been any conversations with Labor power brokers at all with Clive Palmer?
About preferences. Seriously, I'm a confession here. From time to time, I've been referred to by some of you people as a Labor Party power broker. From time to time, I know how to negotiate, and we're not negotiating preferences with these parties.
What about legislation? You say they shouldn't be brought into the mainstream. That means Labor won't deal with them in the next parliament?
Look, what it means is we don't want them in the next parliament. That's what it means. What it means is we're working each and every day to stop them getting into parliament. Scott Morrison's working each and every day to get them into parliament. Well, I'm answering it absolutely. You mightn't like the answer, but it's the one that is required, which is that they won't get into parliament unless they get the excess from the LNP vote in Queensland. That's how Palmer gets into parliament. Scott Morrison can stop that. He can stop that today by not giving them preferences and putting a bloke who has ripped off workers, who's ripped off taxpayers, who has ads speaking about foreign investment in Australia that are funded because of foreign investment in Australia and the royalties he receives. A bloke who speaks about foreign investment, whose core flutes are printed in China. That's what this bloke stands for. Scott Morrison needs to explain that because we will stand up for the national interest.